Ladies and gentlemen, very excited to have Levi Leipheimer on the show, kicking things straight into the gear. One of the things I remember from hosting events that I've done over the time in my period in cycling is that there's a figurative hangover that comes with it. There is a literal hangover that can come with it as well, but there's a lot that is involved in the coming down process. So here we are in your 16th annual. We're 1 week out, so if you had the literal hangover, it's probably been resolved by now. But how is your post-event hangover from this 2025 Levi's Gran Fondo?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Ted. Glad to be here, and thank you for being a part of the last two Growler. Well, actually, I don't know, you've done the...
I want to say I've done at least 4, maybe 5. Yeah, I've got, I mean, it was literally at the finish of this year's event. There I am, like, sort of pack fodder, and I was like, man, it was only a handful of years ago. I was racing a very cherubic, childish Luke Lamperti because I think he was probably 14 years old. Anyway, yeah, it's been really cool to see the variety of...
for your question, I would compare it, the feeling afterwards, that hangover you're talking about, it's like coming out of a stage race.
Yeah.
Really just, I felt empty, and it's all because of the stress and, caring so much about it. Like, to every little detail becomes super important, because one thing I've learned is it's all in the details.
Yeah.
They all add up and they make a difference. And that's what I believe makes a difference between doing a great job and just an average job. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Carlos Perez, the co-founder and director of the event with Bike Monkey, and we both agree that for both him and I, it's the hardest we've ever worked coming into a Fondo or Growler. It's, kind of just a huge undertaking with the race and the live stream and all the moving components, trying to keep everyone safe and everybody happy.
Yeah.
Which I got to tell you is actually impossible, but we do our best.
All little anecdotes that I want to touch on over the course of the conversation. Let's go back through the history of Levi's Gran Fondo, because I want to say it's kicked off in 2009. That's sort of mid tail end of your career. But while you were still racing a bike. So yeah, talk to me about the whole arc of Levi's Fondo over the years.
So I tell this story a lot, but there's really no short answer. I kind of have to just tell the history of what inspired it. And for me,
please,
it was the fact that, as you know, being a professional cyclist, professional athlete, you're in this self-centered space. You have to really look after yourself, and you pamper yourself 24/7, 365. And a lot of people helped me, from when I was at a young age all the way to the end of my career, from my parents to the fans to mechanics and soigneurs and friends, really just selflessly gave themselves and their time to help me achieve the success that I did. And I was always sort of looking for a way to pay them back, or at least pay it forward. And then, it was 2009, a week after I won the Tour of California for the third time. And I mentioned that because I think it was perfect timing, and we had the perfect place to bring the popular Italian Gran Fondos to the U.S. And it was an instant success because it was this shiny new thing in America. And it really gave people the experience of what it's like to be in this exciting, mass participation event where there's some pros there, but then there's people of all ages and all abilities, and the vibe was great. I mean, it was super electric, and people were out there accomplishing the biggest ride that they've ever done or pushing themselves, and it was just fantastic. So yeah, it was just a way for me to sort of feel better about having all those people help me, and I couldn't pay it back. And recognizing that, I had a lot of fortune in my life. I had a lot of opportunities. I was lucky in a lot of sense, and not everybody has that opportunity. So for us, to create the King Ridge Foundation, which the event supports, and to support local organizations that give at-risk youth a chance was really important to me, because that's a great example of kids that just didn't have the opportunities that I have.
Yeah.
had.
Yeah. So how about, what has been the sort of arc of participation, or what were sort of peak years, or what over time had you guys decide to move locations? Because I think it was Santa Rosa at one point, and now we're up in Windsor. Still sort of heart of Sonoma County. What have been some of the learning curves along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question, because, the first year was, I think we just picked a number, like, let's cap it at 3,500, and it sold out immediately.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let's go to 5,000, sold out immediately. Let's go to 7,500, sold out super quick.
Crazy.
I think looking back, we probably should not have gone so big. I think it would have been better to keep it a little smaller, and maybe there's creating more demand there. But it was an instant success, and I think there were at least 100 Gran Fondos that popped up across the U.S., which is super flattering. And it feels good to have spread the joy of riding a bike in that sense. So it was, those were the early years, and they're in Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
And you're right. It took a lot of, and this will segue into why we started doing the Growler race. It took a lot of fine tuning those processes with CHP, the county, landowners, residents, traffic control, all of it, the festival component, our participants, how we message, how we do signage, moto marshals, on-bike doctors, Velomed. And over the last 16 years, we've sort of become experts at that.
Yeah.
And really, that's what I like to say, where the Gran Fondo has, in a sense, like subsidized the race. It's not so much that we're not taking money from people's registration to put up as prize money. For me, the subsidization is, if that's a word, subsidization.
It sounds like a word. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll call it a word. It's been the fact that we have perfected, or not perfected, but we've dialed in these processes and these relationships to then take it up a notch to have this elite level Growler race.
Makes sense. How about, how did you link up with Bike Monkey and Carlos in the first place?
It's funny because I think he has the original email like framed somewhere.
Yeah.
I at the time, Tour California was going on, and Santa Rosa was heavily involved.
Yeah. And
I was always in contact with the, I forget what her position was, but she was at the Sonoma County Tourism Board.
Mm-hmm.
And she worked closely with Tour California, and I was always in contact with her. Her name was Mo McElroy. And when I had this idea after the 2009 Tour California, she was the person I emailed. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm just going to start working with Sonoma County Tourism.
Yeah.
And I had met Carlos once before, because Bike Monkey used to be a local magazine.
Oh, no kidding.
It was really, really great, high quality magazine that came out. I think it was quarterly.
Yeah.
It had one mountain bike event that he did called Boggs.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is now 21 years old, I think.
Crazy.
But anyway, met him once before, but I just didn't really know him that well. Anyway, she put us together.
Okay.
She emailed Carlos and was like, "What do you think?" And he just without hesitation is like, "We're going to do this."
Yeah.
And it was obviously the biggest event he'd ever done. And he and the Bike Monkey team, they just poured themselves into it and nailed it. And
That's
Carlos
awesome.
and I'm so lucky to have connected with him over the last 16 years, become very close, and we work really well together. And I just can't put into words how grateful I am for Carlos as a partner.
Sure. That's awesome. Yeah. We had our 14th and final King Challenge, but at that, we had a reception at the end of it, and my co-producer has the email that I reached out to him with and read it for the first time in 14 years, and I was like, man, that is neat. It's cool to have that kind of history. Santa Rosa, of course, is an integral part of your life. It's an integral part of the Fondo, Greater Sonoma County. You know, this place that I spent a bunch of time in my career. You've spent an enormous amount of time in your career. How is it you landed there in the first place?
Well, I grew up in Montana.
Right.
And that's where I fell in love with the bike. And I graduated high school in Salt Lake City. I went to the University of Utah off and on for a couple of years as I was getting more serious about the bike.
Were you a ski racer at the same time? Where does skiing fit in?
Yeah, so my parents, they had a ski shop. They're both ski instructors. They put me on skis when I was like 13 months old. That's like the first time I was on skis. So I grew up alpine ski racing. That led into the bike. Yeah. My brother, who's 7 years older than I am, at the time I was like 12, and he and his friends were racing 10 speeds at the time. And I remember jumping on his bike after a race when I was 12, and I was like, holy shit, this thing's fast. And so that got me into the bike, and still kind of, road bike racing, but ski racing at the same time in my teens. Yeah. And then I ended up going to Utah, but got more and more serious about the bike. And then I actually went to Belgium and lived in a hostel for a few years, like during the season, just raced kermesses and threw myself into the deep end. So then, eventually I make my way to Santa Rosa because I had signed my first pro contract with a continental level American team called Colorado Cyclist, which was Malcolm Elliott, Thurlow Rogers, Kirk Willett, John Peters. So Kirk and John lived in Santa Rosa. Okay. And I was like, well, I can't live in Montana. There's like 2 weeks of summer there. Right. So they convinced me I packed up everything I owned in a small little pickup and drove there. And after 2 rides in Sonoma County, I was like, holy shit, this is the place.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the first time I ever left New England to chase bike racing, and it was where we had our first ever team camp. You were peak of your career, and I just remember it wasn't even a group ride. It was just like rolling up on you at the front and just a train of people out the back, slowly dropping off the back as you're motor pacing it.
Which were you on Bissell?
In Priority Health preceded Bissell. So that would have been 2006. I stayed with Glenn Mitchell for a bit. We were teammates, and then so 2 years of Priority Health, and that became Bissell. It's it is a special spot. I mean, it's sort of a miracle there aren't more people there, because you have seemingly endless riding of all varieties, very accommodating climate year round.
Yeah, I mean, it took me like more than a decade to ride all of the roads. Sure. It's just, like you said, it's endless. It's diverse. You've got Highway 1 and the rugged edge of the continent. Sure. Landscape there, redwoods, those coastal hills, which are hella steep, narrow. Yeah. Single track for the road bike. Then you got the valley with the vineyards and the rolling oak hills. And then in the eastern part of the county, you've got big climbs, geysers, Pine Flat. Yeah. So it was just endless. And it's just an adventure to go out and train every day. Yeah, completely. Now, you and I obviously crossed paths at your event, 2 years or last year. We also happened to cross paths in a small town in Wisconsin in the form of a Nordic ski race last year, of all places. You're now living up in the mountains. You have an amazing place and time and ability to ski. How is it you get your endorphin rush out? Like, are you riding? Are you skiing? How do you scratch that itch? Yeah. Life just kind of took me to Tahoe. It was 2018. So coming up on, 7 years now, almost. That's nuts. By the way, I guess that makes me a local. There's some sort of rule around here. You have to be here for 7 years, and then you're a true local. Nice. But yeah, life took me to Tahoe, which is just a beautiful, amazing place. So lucky to live here. Yeah. It's just incredible. But when I moved here, and I'd done a little bit of cross country skiing when I was younger, just a little bit. But when I moved here, I was like, okay, I better dive into this sport because there's no riding your bike in the winter here.
Yeah.
There's some days, but yeah, I did a lot of alpine skiing at first, but over the years, I've just gotten more and more, I've fallen more and more in love with Nordic skiing because it's, it's like the bicycle. It's therapeutic. You get into this rhythmic aerobic state, and it's a way to clear your mind and to get your endorphins and to feel healthy. And, over the years, I kind of just wasn't as enthused to go stand in line and ride the lift. I mean, that's great and all, but just got more and more into Nordic skiing. And I think the challenge of it for sure is part of the appeal because, for 7 years now, I've been doing it. And it's like, I'm just like a Bambi on ice out there. It's so difficult, as you can relate, right? It's right. The technique is insane.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I grew up playing hockey and alpine skiing. So, I'm accustomed only to metal edges. And so funny Bambi's the perfect analogy. It's like plastic edges just do not make sense. So you're constantly just fast feet in order to stay upright. It is, it's such a skill to ideally have developed over your whole life, but at least you have the benefit of being familiar with the art of sliding on snow with alpine skiing.
Yeah. I guess it crosses over a little bit, but not a whole lot, Sure. I mean, like you said, we did the Berkey together and, we got to see some, a couple of the world's best there. Yeah. And it's just amazing, right? Like if you don't grow up on skis at a young age on Nordic skis, you'll never reach that level. There's just no way.
Right. Yeah. I loved the timing which I finished. Like I'm basically slow enough to get lapped by the leading women. And so I get to watch them finish as I'm finishing. I'm like, yeah, that's true skiing right there. How about riding? Do you end up on bike some of the year? Do you enjoy riding? Are you mountain biking? What do you do on two wheels?
No, I mean, I'm also grateful that I still love to ride my bike. I've seen so many pros who, once they stop, they never ride again. And I honestly can't comprehend that. I don't know, for me to do what we did, like it was so hard on the world tour, so much effort that if you don't really love to ride your bike, which I would think you'd want to do your whole life if you really love it. I mean, obviously not at that level. I can understand that, but to never touch it again. I just don't know how they were able to survive at that level without the desire to keep going on the bike. So yes, I love to ride my bike. I ride road, mountain, gravel. Yeah. This is a great place to do it.
Sure. So turning back towards the Growler, do you keep close tabs on what's happening on the global race scene or on the North American race scene? Like, are you paying attention? Do you check in on cycling news? What's your grasp to the state of cycling?
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely paying more attention now. I've always watched the Tour de France, for example, every year since I retired. I haven't always watched all the races, but now I would say I watch everything we can get, here in the US that's in regards to the big races in Europe, both men and women. Yeah. And now I definitely pay much more attention to the domestic side because, we're trying to build the Growler into something. I don't know what that is, but what it's become, it's my responsibility definitely to pay attention and try to curate and build the best field that I can. And, I end up communicating with all these athletes. So I follow them on Instagram and I see what's happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It is an interesting state. So this past weekend, I took some quick notes. Whiskey Off-Road is a massive mountain bike event. BWR California is a huge gravel event going on. My wife and I competed in the UCI race in Arkansas. There was another UCI gravel race going on in Ontario. Up in your former neck of the woods, Northern California, that one of the Grasshoppers was happening. Tour of the Gila, speaking of road racing, was going on. And then there's also like the traditional annual, for decades now, the Southeast Gravel Crit Series.
Yeah.
So there are so many things going on, but it also feels very... my point is, if you took just a snapshot of this weekend, you'd be like, man, North American racing is burgeoning. And on the other hand, it feels like it's very discombobulated. I feel like there's huge mistakes being made. Like, I want to say a UCI race maybe a year or two ago was overlapping with nationals or something like that, or there were 2 UCI races happening literally on the same weekend. There just seems to be a lot of mistakes going on. So when I ask a general question of like, what do you see as the state of North American racing right now? What's your response to that?
Well, as you're talking about all the events going on, it's easy to say like, well, why don't you all just move and like, don't overlap, which would be ideal.
Yeah.
But now being on this side of it is, as you know, like when it comes time to organize an event, you're not only working around other races, like cycling races, but you have to work with your local community.
Oh, yeah.
And there's other events going on. Windsor, the town of Windsor is a great partner of ours. But they offer us our support because they want a shoulder season event. Mm-hmm. We also work around a long-standing cycling event in Sonoma County, the Wine Country Century, hosted by the Santa Rosa Cycling Club. And they've been around for decades. Yeah. And they're an integral part for us. They help us put on our event. We don't want to overlap with their event.
Sure.
We need to take care of each other. Sea Otter is, they're kind of like the big dog on the West Coast in the spring. We can't overlap with them.
Yep.
So, yeah, next year, we're forced to push back to this weekend, this last weekend, which was BWR, Gila, Whiskey. Yeah. All these other events you're speaking about. We don't really have a choice. I would really love not to overlap with them. And I'm sure they would love that we didn't overlap with them, but it's, I just don't know what to do.
Yeah. I think it was during Sea Otter that Redlands, Sea Otter offers a little of everything. There's downhill mountain biking, there's cross-country mountain biking, there's gravel races, there's crit racing. And it also overlapped with Redlands, which to your point is arguably at this point North America's biggest stage race. So it's sort of a head scratcher to put 2 of the biggest races on simultaneously, but yeah, there are a lot of things that are outside the general purview of your typical cyclist.
Yeah.
So then,
that's always been the problem with even the high end of the sport. There's honestly just too many races going on. Uh-huh. It's very confusing. Like, it would be much better if it were a bit more like Formula One, where all the top riders were competing together all the time.
Sure.
I don't think it's fair to, do a direct comparison because there's different abilities within our sport. Yeah. You've got climbers and GC guys and sprinters and classics guys, and they do each need their race, but there's still a bit too much overlap, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole conversation unto itself.
Yeah. But it relates to what we're talking about.
Completely. Yeah. You have the Mark Hershey's and people who would be a team leader on other teams chasing UCI points, taking them away. Yeah, never mind. Like, this is a long conversation there. So how about, there's various series in what I'd call this sort of new age of North American racing. And obviously Lifetime is at the lead of that right now on the off-road side. BWR is up there. There are these other sort of independent stage races going on. I guess the long-winded question is, where do you see the Growler fitting into this puzzle? It's a 137-mile paved road race with 20 meters of gravel, but it has a feel of a gravel race, and I'm not the only person to say that. It just has this sort of like independent feel to it, and the ability to take it on as an independent racer. Where do you see it fitting into this overarching puzzle right now?
Well, I think first and foremost, I want to make it so that, let's take Marcus Shelton, for example. For me, when I see what he did this year at the Growler, that is exactly the point of what I want to see with the Growler.
And let's point out who he is. He finished, this is this, 21-year-old kid who... 20
or 21, I there's been some, I've heard both, but
yeah, he maybe didn't actually earn his post-race beer. Yeah, 21-year-old kid from Marin, just down the road, who goes toe-to-toe and ultimately finishes second, just behind Keegan and ahead of Matt Beers. So
third.
Okay.
Con McDonald was second.
That's right. Another fellow breakaway companion.
Yeah, and both of them had really amazing rides, right? And
yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is that relatively unknown guy on the roadside who can show up without a team. You know, maybe he had like family member out at the personal support zone.
Right.
Even if he didn't, we're trying to make that personal support zone so that it's just as fair for someone without someone there. So there's neutral bottles and we can definitely do a much better job going forward with all the aid stations and the personal support zone. But the goal is someone like that can show up all by himself and be on equal footing with Keegan or you or Pete, you know, who are on now they're on teams.
Sure.
With support. You know, they each have a personal mechanic and someone who can go to the feed zone and help them out.
Yeah. But
somebody can, like Marcus, can come in and not be at a big disadvantage. They don't have to be on a team. They don't have to have a team car behind them. So the barrier to entry is lower. By the way, not anybody can get into the Growler. I'm trying to keep it safe. So, you know, there needs to be a lot of racing experience from whoever races it. And obviously we want to create some prestige with it. So the entire field was vetted, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about how safe it was and how everybody behaved.
Yeah.
But back to the point of where I see the Growler fitting in is we don't have a big, long, hard road race like this in the U.S. With that level of entry, so to speak, that has the component of gravel that is self-reliant and individualistic in a sense. I just think it's a way to really showcase some talent on the road. And, you know, I would be so happy if Marcus got picked up by EF or Trek or whatever. Because, I mean, he's obviously he's got talent.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's amazing to see the ride he did. Yeah, I mean, the point is you can't fake that kind of endurance. No. And especially at that age, to go 6 hours into a race and still have legs, yeah.
And, you know, I think you can testify to how hard that route is. On paper, you know, we just watched Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which I realize has less climbing per distance than the Growler.
Yeah.
They averaged 41.8 in Liège the other day, fastest ever.
Yeah.
Those roads are much better shaped than the Growler.
Right.
Growler, they averaged 37K an hour. Yeah. I would think that a World Tour peloton would be hard pressed to go over 40K an hour on the Growler.
Yeah.
Because the roads are much slower.
Yep.
So the level's high.
Sure. The level's super high. I mean, what I think makes it fun to be able to show up to it is you do so as an individual, and it has that gravel feel. What I selfishly don't like seeing in gravel is when teams arrive and you're just immediately outnumbered, and you can immediately play a numbers game, throw one of your teammates out the road, and it's well, what am I going to do? I'm just one person. I'm not going to waste my energy. With the point being, you're talking about how fast our peloton at the Growler was going. It's going 37K an hour without the benefit of domestiques to roll along. So that is a very rapid moving group.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any way around, you know, people make alliances out there. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do about that?
Right.
It is what it is, but we're just doing the best we can.
Sure.
I think feel a space that I think there's demand for it still. You know, we had the luxury of Tour California, Tour Utah, USA Pro Challenge, Tour Georgia, all these big races.
Missouri.
Are gone. They're gone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and then it's almost like I'm trying to pigeonhole you in an answer to where does this fit in? when the answer is it can exist on its own currently. I mean, it's obviously existing on its own currently successfully to have the draw that it is. Mm-hmm. I want to say, 2,000 some odd people signed up, a very competitive field in both the men's and women's elite races. And so as I keep on asking, like, is it a gravel race? Is it its own thing? Is it a road race? You don't need to answer the question because it is successful, at least on its face, as it is. So then maybe another question would be like, what is the future of the event? Or do you purely look at it sort of year over year saying, okay, 2025 worked well, maybe we can tweak this and niggle that? Or do you have a 3, 5, 10-year plan right now?
I mean, we are, things just kind of happen. Like, there's no way that we could have predicted the Growler this year with technically the world's largest prize purse in cycling for a one-day race.
Something I do want to talk about.
Yeah. It was, we just have this opportunity from Fari Diner and Skipstone, who believes in what we're doing and is like, loves the area, wants to help reinvigorate what we call road cycling, because it's a road event.
Sure.
But, it's as you know, it's technical.
Yes.
So it just happened, right? Like we couldn't envision that. It just happened, and we're working as hard as we can on the opportunity that we have. And we're trying to capitalize on sort of the reinvigoration of our event and road cycling, and try to bring in more sponsors from outside the cycling industry to help sustain what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And that's all we can do, really.
So there's not an interest in bringing in the UCI down the road. Would you want to make it a UCI style race?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I can't even answer that question. I think we're where we are now, for me, is great. I think it fills the step of a ladder that's missing. There's a demand for what we've created, and I really like the uniqueness of it. It feels very American to me.
Yeah.
We're not trying to fit some like the European model. That being said, like if it just somehow the opportunities kept coming and we're like, okay, on Sunday we'll have a full-blown UCI race with the world's biggest teams, like that would be pretty cool too.
100%. Yeah, I can see how it could be a tough question to answer. Like you're being presented these doors, and then it's like, okay, yes, we'll open this door or not. And yeah, you don't want to preclude the Marcuses. You don't want to preclude. Mm-hmm. And I think about this all the time with Keegan, right? Keegan is hands down North America's best off-road racer. And he has the chops to hack it in Europe. Totally fine. I don't see him as a GC leader immediately. Maybe he could evolve into that. But at this point in his life, like what he's doing now is fantastic. And then if you turn it purely into a UCI race, then that's going to preclude the two of them from showing up unless they're with a team. I couldn't show up. Matt Beers couldn't show up unless we're racing for a UCI team. It just becomes very politicized very quickly. So
yeah, totally. I mean, it's apples and oranges, right? Like, sure. Who wouldn't want to see? I mean, I'm just obviously throwing this out, but who wouldn't want to see UAE with Pogacar rip up the Growler with, the other world's best teams? That'd be awesome. Like, America needs that. Like going back to California, to Utah, all those big UCI races that you and I got to race that had the world's best teams.
Sure.
America needs that back. Like eventually, we need that back.
I'm laughing because you talked about how it took 10 years for you to ride every road in Sonoma County in your greater backyard when you were living and racing there. And your name is still, of course, painted across Strava, KOMs. And then I'm laughing thinking, okay, finally, let's bring UAE and Tade, and some of your times will finally drop.
Yeah, no question.
How about the route? What you've done with this route is, the way I describe it is you're sort of linking three iconic rides into one. You have King Ridge, you have Skaggs, and Geysers, and they come together in this magnificent 137-mile route. Could you see changing the course? I mean, there's some luxuries of the route you have in that you're largely taking right-hand turns, which is something as a race director you want to do, so you're not crossing traffic.
Yeah.
Are you locked into this route? Are the world's your oyster? How do you see the route evolving?
Yeah, we're a bit locked in because, as you pointed out, we started the event in Santa Rosa, which meant that the old Gran and Growler course, we used to go out to the ocean, to Highway 1, and come back Coleman Valley. Mm-hmm. Now that we're in the town of Windsor, there are some big roads that exist in Sonoma County, and we need to try to stay away from them, especially if it's later in the event where the riders are really spread out, because then you have to shut down traffic on those big roads for a long period of time. Now, for example, for you guys, you do hit one of those big roads early on, River Road, which is a main artery through Guerneville and out to the coast. Mm-hmm. But it's super early in the ride, and you guys are all together, and you're going like 30 miles an hour. It's early in the day. Yeah, we get done with. It doesn't really affect traffic. But we can't send 2,000 riders on that road, or even later in the day on that road, because it's impractical and cost prohibitive to completely close those big roads. So we are a bit locked into what we have with being in the town of Windsor. Yeah,
great point. So
these are details that a lot of people don't realize.
Exactly. Yes, there's a lot more to it than hiring a single police officer and closing downtown. So in a similar tone, having hosted events, staying apprised of what's happening in Steamboat with SBT, there can be some community backlash. There exists what I think of as sort of like the cute idea of having a downtown criterium and people come out and it's all very uplifting and bucolic, but truth be told, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of behind the scenes permitting. There's a lot of what can amount to NIMBY, right? It can be cute to say, I want to have a bike race, but the reality is people don't want it in their backyard. So you could probably ask 10 different people across Windsor and Sonoma County and get 10 different answers, but what has the community response been both this year and across the years? Or is that just too much of an open-ended question?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can wrap it up. I think over the 16 years and in general, it's been great. Sonoma County has a very rich cycling history, Coors Classic, Tour of California, and now with the Gran Fondo for the last 16 years. People are aware that it is cycling nirvana there. We go on these King Ridge, for people who've never been out there. I think the one thing to tell them is it's super remote. Not a lot of people drive there. I mean, there are some ranches out there that have been in families for more than 100 years. And, I think in the beginning, they were a little bit like, what the hell? There's 7,000 people on this road all of a sudden. Yeah. But as time has gone by, they realize it's really not that big of a deal. Like, most of the riders are through pretty quickly. We do a really good job of cleaning up. We have relationships with key businesses and families and communities along the way. Over the years, we have donated a lot of money to the rural fire departments out there that are struggling for funding. And, we just try to really give back to the community and make sure that everybody knows that. And that goes a long ways. So that goes back to the 16 years of hosting thousands of people from across the world and being able to forge these relationships with landowners and the rural fire departments and those rural businesses and communities that have allowed us to now we're going to run like a pretty high level elite race through here, which actually is pretty easy, really. Yeah. Like, you guys are so fast and so experienced and so good at being self-sufficient that it's been really easy. Like, a lot of people within the organization were like, whoa, we're gonna do a real race on these roads. Like, some people were kind of pushed back, and it's like, no, we're gonna do this. Yeah. And then they come back and they're like, oh, you're right, that was actually pretty easy. But I want to hear what you have to say about, how safe did it feel to you? And I know we're being recorded, but I still want an honest answer. And how was the overall ability of the field this year at the Growler, and what would be your advice for us going forward?
Broad strokes, I found it safe, and I know that is easier said than done, because I mean, what my follow-up question was going to be, and now this can turn into this back and forth dialogue on it, is the third rail conversation in gravel right now is we're doing these races on open roads, and it's just freaking dangerous. And no matter what, people are looking for an advantage. So taking blind corners, crossing yellow lines, so on and so forth is inevitable. And then bike racing is dangerous. So I saw a little bit of that early on. I think, yeah, enforcing yellow line rule. I thought there are motos at the front of the Growler. They did a good job of suggesting. I mean, that's what's also funny, right? It's not like you're going to get a UCI fine and kicked out of the race. The moto, I witnessed him ride up to somebody who had gone across the yellow line and said, "Hey, you got to go back to the pack. Like, don't take an advantage, but you're also not kicked out of the race."
Good.
Great answer. That's what you want to see. We're not in a competitive walking race around a controlled environment in a stadium, right? There are just inevitable dangers to bike racing, and I'm preaching to the choir. So I don't know how to remove that, but people make, people make sort of dumb decisions, and then by and large, I think the general masses make good decisions. There's just some really scary part about racing on open roads that I don't know how to solve. And maybe SBT is solving that in my mind, and I'm speaking on the gravel side. Maybe they are solving that by having this 3-lap controlled 30-mile route, and maybe that's the future of North American gravel. I don't know. My long-winded answer is I thought it was overall quite safe, given how dangerous it could be. Because these, I mean, to your point, they're narrow, kind of harrowing, awesome roads.
Yeah, but a lot of blind corners, steep descents.
Yeah.
It's a one loop of 138 miles. Like you don't repeat any roads. So
yeah. And yeah, some of the top of King Ridge, I mean, speaking to specifics, you hit a few peaks and then you have some ripping fast descents for, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I bet outside of you and Pete, I've ridden those roads more than anyone else in that group. And I'm just thinking, I'm watching people make terrible decisions. Following them, knowing that if there's a car, I'm going to be able to see what happens to that person, less so me. But yeah, thankfully it went off without a hitch.
Yeah, and I would hope that both CHP and the number of moto marshals and TV camera bikes out there, they're in a sense plowing the way for you. Yeah, and that happens in the front for sure. I mean, okay, my stature is such that going up King Ridge with the likes of 130-pound Keegan makes it challenging. So yeah, back a handful of minutes, but still racing. That's what's great about it. And that's what I love. It's not like somebody calls Gruppetto and you say, peace out, I'm going to soft pedal the next 100 miles. Yeah. It's cool to have that gravel feel where people are still racing from start to finish. Yeah. And maybe there's, with the help of veterans like yourself, to teach some of the younger guys, when you're in a situation like that, where you're like kind of out of all that moto flotilla of motos. You do you have to treat it like you're on a training ride. You can go fast, but there's no cutting blind corners. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would try to take, like coming down geysers. I led geysers knowing that.
Oh God, I feel sorry for whoever was following you, because I've seen you descend. You're fast.
We had a little gap at the bottom. It was me and Ryan Gorman.
Oh,
in fact, we got to the bottom, then he's like, all right, let's turn it on. I was like, geez, come on. I didn't want to because you are scared of what's happening behind you. But yeah, I don't know the answer to it. Maybe there is. It's nice that people are considering it, but it is just such a tough part of any conversation. How do you keep this dangerous sport safe?
Yeah, costs a lot of money.
Yeah. So, okay, great segue. The financial aspect. 156K, split evenly, male, female. The biggest one-day payout in all of global cycling. As I've seen, it was the same weekend as Roubaix, I think the winner of Roubaix gets
before, but yeah.
Okay.
The winner of Roubaix gets the winner. Well, I don't know what the winner gets, but the men's prize purse for Roubaix, because I looked it up, was 90,000 euro.
Yeah.
So technically, that's more than the men's side of the Growler, but we have equal payout. So
sure. I think the winner gets like $18,000. I could be incorrect about that. The winner of the stage of the tour is going to be less than the winner of the Growler. The winner of the Growler takes home $25,000 with a pretty steady, handsome payout all the way down through top 10.
Yeah.
You mentioned a name. I mean, yeah. Where did this side of the budget come from?
Well, we actually have sort of like a private donor, let's call him, who specifically wanted the money, his portion, to go to the prize purse. He wants the athletes to get paid.
Yeah.
So it's not coming out of the general participants registration fee. It's not coming out of any sponsorship dollars besides Skipstone and an unnamed individual. So yeah, they just wanted, they feel pretty passionately about supporting the athlete directly and reinvigorating cycling in general, specifically road cycling in America. Another opportunity that, came to us, and we're going to just do our best to, follow up on their wishes and act on the opportunity.
Yeah. That'd be a hard thing to say no to.
Yeah. It brought a lot of work in, and Fari with Skipstone, he was like, you guys should really live stream this thing, and we're like, oh boy. And the more I thought about it, I was like, he's right, man. We have this amazing opportunity. We have to show as many people as we can what's happening for our event, for our partners, and for the athletes. I think it really changes the game when you can live stream it. And it was a huge undertaking, and I think it went pretty well. It can definitely go better, but for our first try, I think it was pretty great.
I can't fathom it, and thankfully it's not something I've had to fathom. I guess my point is, you're in and out of remote areas where reception's going to be terrible. In preparation for this conversation, I'm Googling all sorts of things, and yeah, it goes back to months ago and maybe even late 2024, where there are headlines about this event is going to be live streamed. So I know that, yeah, it's not been without its lead up and hard work beforehand. In big picture format, can you talk about what it, like, do you have a helicopter flying overhead? Like that would be the standard operation for like a Tour of California or the races we're watching over in Europe. How do you live stream it?
Well, actually, Tour of California and Tour de France, all the big races, they not only have helicopters, but they have a fixed wing plane, because that's how they're bouncing the signal, because, cell coverage, it doesn't exist everywhere. But one thing that does exist now that we took advantage of, and every motorbike had, was a Starlink Mini. So when there's not cell coverage, they also had this box called a live view unit, and it houses 8 SIM cards. So when there's cell coverage, the camera from the motorbike can split the data of the video into those 8 SIM cards, and it sends it directly to the studio, which in this case was in Colorado. And they're the ones adding graphics and directing which cameras to be shown.
Wow. Even
though our commentators were on the ground there in Windsor, they're seeing what the studio's seeing. They're commenting. The studio's integrating it all. Like, we're states away, but it's happening. It's getting sent to YouTube within, the delay, because I was watching YouTube without the sound and I was right next to Matt and Hannah.
Sure.
The delay is not very big. It was like 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So it happens pretty quick. Having said that, there was a very critical part of the Growler that had no cell service, and the Starlink itself wouldn't work because there was a lot of tree cover, and that was the lower part of the geysers, before you get to the steep part.
Yep.
So that's quote unquote a dark zone, and we couldn't show either the men or the women there. And ideally, we would have a helicopter to fix that issue, but we didn't have a budget for that. So we did what we could. We had 3 motos with the men and 3 motos with the women.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were times where, I'm watching every feed and I'm like, we should really be showing this camera, like stuff's happening. And I think that was part of the learning process for me, is like, maybe I need to kind of insert myself a little more into the direction of everything.
Yeah.
But it was my first time. So I was kind of like absorbing it all, but super fun, super invigorating. I learned a lot. And, I think our team did a great job. I mean, definitely some things we can fix, but we got to show, the world that what the Growler is all about, what the Gran Fondo is all about. And I think for a lot of the athletes involved, that they've never been in a live streamed race before.
Right.
And hopefully their sponsors love that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how about, I look, all the races we mentioned earlier, California, Missouri, Georgia, U.S. Pro Cycling
Missouri.
Challenge.
Missouri, yeah.
Dude, Missouri was great. The 2 years it existed.
Yeah.
There are probably a variety of reasons in which they ultimately had to shutter.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to guess that financial support is among the leading of them. So can you speak to long-term sustainability right now? Or is it kind of catch as catch can, and also you work on the current state of the economy?
The latter, for sure. Tour California, I think the budget was more than $1 million a day, and AEG didn't recoup all of that with its sponsors. Mm-hmm. They did a great job. What was it? 13 years it existed, I believe.
Sounds about right.
14 years or something. Longest standing, elite level bike race in the U.S. in the history of the U.S. Had a huge impact on bike racing in the United States, and super grateful, as I'm sure you are, to have been part of that.
Yeah.
But just super expensive, crazy expensive, and cycling in America is not a mainstream sport. So it doesn't get the political support that it needs to have that sustainability and that repeatability. And so, we're just, like I said before, we've had these opportunities, we're acting on it. And part of me really wants to hang on and like work as hard as I can on it, which I will, but I have to be aware that if we don't have those opportunities in the future, I have to be content with what we've done until that point, for example.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard to change the entire model.
Yeah.
Which is to say, so much of professional cycling hinges on benevolent supporters.
But that's a great segue into why, we believe this could be a model, because we are combining in this mass participation event that has existed for a while, and we have gained local support for it. Mm-hmm. We're trying to sort of give back to the elite side of the sport, which I think it was born out of, that there was a perfect timing of me winning Tour of California for 3 years in a row and succeeding on the world stage. It was the perfect place for it. And that's what the event was built on. And so I think this could be a way, with everything that's going on with all ages, all abilities, different routes, a festival component, giving back to charity. It could be a model for other organizers to create something sustainable. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then it almost, in a way, goes back to sort of gravel vibes. It's like you're there for the masses, there for all abilities. There's a bike race at the front of it.
Yeah, don't you think that that's like the U.S. model? People want to participate.
Yeah. And right, my heart is in road racing, right? Just like you, that's where I got into cycling. I love road racing. I want nothing more than to see North American road racing succeed. And so I look at somebody like Ian Lopez from Northern California, right? And he's one of the very few examples of people who he dabbled in a variety of types of cycling, but then he was in the Grand Prix and he was a bike racer, and that's brought him to professional road cycling. I'd love to see 100 Ians, but it's really cool to see gravel be his stepping stone.
Yeah, because I think gravel it definitely showcases who's got the engine. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. Those races are really hard.
Yeah.
And I think the Growler is a great complement to that. Like whoever's succeeding at gravel in these big, long, hard events, the Growler's perfect for them. I mean, Matt Beers, for example.
Yeah. Which is also so funny because like he did, it speaks to whatever it is, the je ne sais quoi to succeed at the World Tour. Like he did a stint at UAE on their Devo program. And like whoever looked at the draft he puts out and the numbers he puts out and didn't sign him to a World Tour contract is crazy. That said, the UAE roster is pretty good.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I heard that in a podcast of his. I mean, it's no wonder. But yeah, I think he did a very short stint. And
I see it as well. Like the capabilities that he would have in the World Tour, like would be a hot commodity.
Oh my word.
No question.
Yeah. But then,
I mean, he could sit on the front of the Tour de France up and over mountains. Like huge asset to any team.
Yeah. Crazy. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, in deference to your generosity this afternoon, we're going to wrap up with 3 traditional questions.
Yeah.
Levi, what is your number one favorite place to ride a bike? What is the number one place that you would like to ride a bike that you've never ridden? And with whom would you like to go out and share a bike ride?
Oh, I mean, I've had the great fortune of racing and riding all over the world. And I mean, there's some amazing places, right? The iconic Alps and the Pyrenees and the Dolomites. I would encourage everybody who's a cycling enthusiast to go ride them. But Sonoma County is pretty special. And it's special because it's not as well known as those places, but it's apples and oranges, but it's equally as good. It's just fantastic place to ride a bike. And every time I go back, I'm like, yeah, this doesn't get old. I rode the geysers 2 days after you guys did.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking to myself. Like this does not get old. I love it there.
How about, so diving into specifics within the question, do you have a favorite route? And maybe I don't want to make it biased towards a Growler. Like, do you have one climb that you like above the rest in Sonoma County?
I mean, there's a lot of great roads, really. Like, there's geysers, Ida Clayton, Pine Flat. There's littler known roads, both in Napa and Sonoma, that are great. But really the marquee road is King Ridge. Yeah. King Ridge is unprecedented in the rest of the world. Yeah. You really have to go there to see it and realize, like, wow, Yeah, absolutely. Not a lot of adjectives for that road. So where is one place you've ridden all over? Where do you want to go ride? Or Nordic Ski. Yeah. I've never done the famous side of the Stelvio with 47 switchbacks. Oh, no kidding. Well, likewise. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a crime. I've done the other side, just up and down. Mm-hmm. I've never done that side. I'd kind of like to ride that someday. That's what comes to the top of my head right now. I've like I said, I've had the luxury of riding a lot of places and a lot of roads, and that's the only one I can think of. Yeah, that's awesome. And then, I'd probably to go ride that with my wife that'd be great. To answer your third question. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect answer. All right. Well, with any luck, your 2025 Growler Levi's Gran Fondo hangover has been relieved. I am appreciative of your time. We're already working, like Carlos and I are still on the phone every day. Yeah. April 25th, 2026. Yeah. Mark it on the calendar. April 25th, 2026. Right. Perfect. All right. I appreciate the time, insight, conversation. Always good to catch up. Thank you very much, Levi. Thanks, Ted. Appreciate it.